Welcome everyone to the 2026 edition of the Natural and Working Lands Advisory Committee. So pleased to see you all. I miss you all. I miss this group. In a lot of ways, you're one of the best parts of my job. So I just really I like you guys. I like your knowledge. I like our conversations. So thank you. If you felt like sharing some of your best holiday memories in the chat while I go through some of the boring housekeeping items this morning, feel free to do so. I will just share that I was in on the Big Island with some friends over the holiday, and people in Hawaii go nuts with fireworks. I have never seen anything like it. It has changed my life forever. So that is my share. Next slide, Jen. Thank you. So I'm going to try and start adding these purpose slides to the beginning of our meetings. Today, we're going to be sharing the next steps for the workforce inventory work, since we just got those final reports out. We'll be gathering your feedback for topics for these meetings for this year. Thank you to those that were able to participate in the Easy Retro already. Lots of good stuff in there. Look forward to talking about it. We'll be able to introduce you to our newest contractor team, RTI International, and their work that they've started on the NCS and Metrics project. So we'll seek your feedback for that today. Next slide, Jen. And you have seen this slide. You are familiar. It will stay here for the 2026 season. Thank you for your fabulous attendance last year. No one missed more than 3 meetings. I don't even know if people missed 3 meetings, maybe not more than 2. So just really have a lot of gratitude for the commitment you've made to this group. Next slide. And of course, we're all here. We're on Teams. We're going to be on Teams for 2026 and not WebEx. Jen, in case people are unfamiliar, would you mind going over how to use Teams?
Of course. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today, we'll be using Teams. As a committee member, you should be able to see this top row on your Teams page. You have the ability to chat, raise your hand, react, also the ability to turn on your camera and unmute yourself. Please remember to keep your mic muted if you are not speaking. As public, you are able to view the chat and raise your hand if you have any questions. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted later on our Odo YouTube channel. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Next slide. Okay, this is the agenda. Just to show you that we have, we'll be through with our part at about 10:15 a.m. or so, and we have plenty of time to work with the project team today. And so really looking forward to that, trying to keep to our promise of not speaking for more than 50% of the time. Next slide. Okay. Also, we're going to keep doing that comments Google Doc because you guys utilize it really well and it's very helpful for us. Jason will go ahead and put that in the chat so that you can put your thoughts. Jen, could you elevate Lauren? Okay, excellent. Yeah, continue to put your comments, your thoughts, kudos, and or worries and concerns in that Google document. All the meetings are scheduled and you should have them in your calendar. If you do not see calendar invites, please let Jen know and we will forward those to you. You already know, change the teams. And to try and meet accessibility requirements, we haven't done this before, but we will be trying to post the slide the day before so that you all and the public can have the slides and follow along if they need those. Next slide. So we wanted to talk through, it feels like just yesterday on December 31st, we were able to deliver the workforce study, and we just wanted to talk through a little bit about what is next. It's important context to know that that was a one-time allocation from the legislature, so it's not in our normal work plan. If we were to do more work on on the natural climate solutions workforce or what it might take to implement natural climate solutions at scale in the state, we would need more direction and more support from the legislature. And we're still finishing up current work. I'll share a little bit more about that on the next slide. But we're finally finalizing a memo from Serena Fasthorse from Kimamilla Consulting on her Travel Nation and Intertribal Organization interviews. And while all that information was in the final report, it's very nice to have it in kind of a separate standalone memo, given the challenges that Indigenous peoples and tribal nations and tribal communities face. And so really looking forward to publishing that. All three of these items will be sent to the legislature as a package when we're finished with them. Also in the short term, we just really want to share out the information and wanted to encourage you as advisory committee members to feel empowered to share the information. While we did the study, Odo is not an implementer of Natural Climate Solutions workforce, and so we need all of our partners to pick up and carry this work. Happy to help support it and continue to analyze it and conduct studies as is helpful. We're also hoping to make some fact sheets so that as it's shared out, some of the juicy and rich information in the report can be passed out in digestible tidbits. So please look to that. We'll share it as we are able to produce them. And over the next year, we're looking forward to working on prioritizing all the recommendations within the document, or a little bit of prioritization, maybe informal. There was so much information, and we did not try to prioritize it. I think it was a little early to prioritize. It's good to just get the information out there first, but it would be nice to know maybe what are the main actions or low fruit actions that agencies could take, for instance. So we'll be thinking about that likely after this current project finishes up. Next slide, Jen. And so I wanted to mention the profiles more in detail. We recall when we worked together towards the beginning of the project that we flashed our profiles, like, hey, we're going to have some of these profiles, and we do, and we will. There will be 15 occupation profiles that are related to NCS implementation and 24 program profiles related to training programs that train people to implement actions related to natural climate solutions. And we're working with, I wanted to let you know that we're working with the organizations right now that offer those training programs to make sure the information that we have in these draft profiles is accurate and reflects their programs like fully, rightfully, and we're linking it to linking their programs to natural climate solutions in the right way. I wanted to actually ask this group if there was any of you that might be interested in reviewing our draft occupation profiles. This group, you're in the field, you're close to the work, you understand who you're hiring and what skills are needed. And also realize that is an extra lift to look at 15 draft occupation profiles. If you are interested, please put yes, or please contact me, or sure will in the chat, and I will contact you outside of this meeting as we are working toward finishing those up as well. Next slide, Jen. Jason.
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you hear me all right? Thumbs up? Great. All right, so as you know, we published the state's first generation land-based net carbon inventory on December 31st of 2025, several hours before the deadline. I'm going to brag on that. And I want to thank you all again for your feedback provided throughout the compilation process. I'm going to talk a bit about the next steps that we have planned for this inventory and future inventory analyses. So based on the work of this first generation inventory, we are going to be generating fact sheets with key insights and takeaways for each of the major land categories. We, of course, got a lot of feedback and questions that are very category specific, and we just wanted to make sure that we give each of these areas the proper amount of information and detail that you all want. So also, Odo is responsible for improving and updating the inventory. This is not the last time you'll be producing it. And the inventory is scheduled to be done every odd numbered year, with the next report to be submitted on December 1st of 2027. We previously communicated that the next report is due at the end of this year, but that was misreading on our part. The statutory language from the bill changed in 2024, and the odd year is what is current in statute. So again, next report, December 1st, 2027. Inventory improvements and updates will be done with staff support only. We did not receive the expected budget support for the 2025 to 2027 biennium, which we would have used to improve data sets and methodologies. So I'm going to be working hard to figure out what we are able to do with the resources we have available to us. However, even with only staff support, we intend for the next inventory analysis to include both updated and new data. So many of the underlying data sets will be updated for either 2025 or 2026, and Odo is generating new information on salinity that can be used to improve the estimates of tidal wetland emissions and removals. Next slide, please. We are also working with our project team to establish a formalized inventory program at Odo. You can see in the image on the right a rough approximation of the 2-year inventory cycle and the different stages of inventory analysis work. So we are currently establishing inventory protocols at Odo, including quality analysis and quality control, internal systems at Odo for supporting the inventory, including archiving processes, and arrangements with Odo personnel and outside experts at other agencies or institutions who can provide expert input and review. We are also working with our project team on the Inventory Improvement Plan, or the IIP, to establish which parts of the inventory are in need of improvement and that are actually feasible to improve, again, using the resources we have. This involves something called key category analysis, which can help establish land categories and pools within those categories, like above ground biomass, below ground biomass, soils, that have the largest influence on the level or the magnitude and trend of emissions over time. Additionally, we are identifying other areas of needed or desired improvements based on our experience in this process and also based on outside input, such as what we receive from agencies and the public and you all. Again, this is all constrained by the fact that we only have staff support and no additional funding for inventory improvements, and also that this will be our first time flying this plane solo, but we're going to give it our best shot. So thanks for your attention. I'm going to pass the mic back to Liz.
Yeah, I think I'll pause there if there's any questions so far in what we have mentioned. Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Okay.
So when we do this inventory analysis, I'm thinking of the grass seed industry, maybe wheat. If you do it the day before harvest or the day after harvest, there's a huge difference in above ground carbon. And I just wonder, is that significant enough to worry about, or how do you deal with that?
I think for those two crops, we only calculated like above ground biomass for perennial crops, so like blueberries and orchards and woody crops. So otherwise, the biomass that is harvested each year is not calculated. Jason, do I have that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Any above ground biomass for an annual crop that's lost in 1 year is assumed to be gained back in the next year, so it's not calculated. So
okay, great. So I mean, Mike, but that's a good question you raise as far as like maybe like the course resolution that the inventory is at right now that happens across each sector and when we bring in land management practices in each land management practice. And so, as we improve the inventory, we'll be looking at that kind of information, and there's science that comes out. I think the assumption that your explicit question works under right now is okay and not something like to majorly worry about, per what Jason just said. But those kind of questions, like keep them coming so that we can kind of mark them and check them and track them as new science and data comes out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, cool. Also, if you think of one and we've moved on, put it in the Google Doc. Thank you. Next slide, Jen. So you guys have seen this slide before, and we're marching down our task list, and we're currently, in the blue arrow. And all this is going to help the commission establish a goal. And while the inventory and the NCS metrics work we're doing will help inform the goal itself, the workforce study helps us understand the status of the workforce that will be implementing the actions that will help us meet the goal. And we wanted to focus on the project work today with the contractor. But to let you know that part of your homework for next month will be to listen to the January 30th commission meeting, either live or recorded, depending on your schedules. That's where we're going to focus most of our primer or our 101 or our context to set the stage for the commission and you all. It will provide that introduction and allow us to have more discussion during the meeting time together, without repeating ourselves too often. So please do listen to that meeting. Next slide, Jen. Having said that, I did want to orient you to how this group will interact with the goal setting process. This is a very generalized flow for you. At our next meeting, building from what we hear at the commission meeting and an internal workshop that we're going to have with the GHGMI team and RTI, a subcommittee of the commission and an agency working group will bring to you and discuss various frames for goal making and present our recommended approach for discussion and feedback with you all. We'll take all of that feedback and start crafting an actual document and a recommendation that we'll share with you again for discussion. And with the agency group and with the commission subcommittee. So we'll be making the rounds. And then finally, we'll finalize the recommendation and get it to the commission for discussion. This flow shows public comment at the end at the commission. However, public testimony, public comment can be taken at any time at any commission meeting, either verbally or written. So, we'll be talking about natural climate solutions all spring. So please do join the commission and provide testimony there or written comments if you have them and would like to do that. Of course, we'll be talking about it here as well. Any questions on that before we move into our next segment? We'll get to the juicy stuff next meeting. Okay, awesome. Next slide, Jen. Okay, we're going to take some time to work together on the Easy Retro. Thank you to those that have already started to fill it out. There's really great stuff in there. I am going to set my timer for 2 minutes for those of you that did not get to participate previously. And then we'll come back together a little bit and I'll call on people to highlight their favorite suggestions. Let me know if you have trouble or if you need extra instruction. We have used this board before. Okay, awesome. If you still need more time, please continue writing. And or if you're having trouble with the board, feel free to put your comment and idea in the chat and or just speak to it right now. Who would like to speak to, can you highlight a couple of your ideas? Who would like to speak to a couple of your ideas? Lauren?
Yeah, I can kick it off. I guess my thoughts or focus would be around funding to do the work. I guess I'm really concerned both about the fact there's no additional funding to take like the workforce recommendations into like implementation and what that would look like. And then also the funding for improvements for the inventory. And so I guess just additional conversations around like agency budgets, POPs, like, and also weaving all these other kind of opportunities around the governor's EO, the prosperity roadmap, just really trying to understand like how best we can leverage and message this work to show it really is promoting this resilience. So those are kind of my two pieces I would like to focus on.
Thank you for that. So I hear kind of, I hear both a funding discussion on maybe mechanisms and also, but also a communications element of like, how do we talk about all this great stuff that's happening in a holistic kind of way?
Yeah, and also just tying it to some of these like really relevant things that are happening and may have additional funding opportunities. So
thank you for that.
I will point out that the inventory does have a biennial replenishment of funds to do that work.
Yes, it should.
But the workforce does not.
Correct.
And where those 21 recommendations land is, we're still working on that.
Andrea. Oh, wait, Jasmine was first, but Andrea, Jasmine, are you okay with that? Andrea.
That's right. Actually, I've been trying to raise my hand, but it won't raise, which is why I had to physically raise my hand. I analogged it.
Andrea,
you have the mic. Feel free to go first.
It wasn't my idea, but I strongly support having us discuss, and this kind of builds on what Lauren said, talking about the economic benefits of the restoration and natural working land projects that are done, because there's a lot of studies that look at the economic benefits, and that will help us make the cases for the funding, specifically for folks that don't care as much about the environmental aspects, but are more interested in the economic aspects.
Thank you for that. I think that's a great point and a great idea. Whoever wrote it. Jazz.
Yes, plus one to what Andrea said as well. My question, or I guess not question, but more of a statement here, is how the newly released inventory numbers could be used to update local planning tools. Like, how would these numbers land on the ground? I'm specifically just thinking about, specifically for wetlands, like the blue carbon calculator. How can that be integrated into those kind of local decision-making tools that state agencies are using? And how can there be a pipeline? I don't know if that communication, what would happen between specifically Odo and the agencies, or who would lead that communication in that pipeline.
Thank you for that comment, Jasmine. I think you're right that it's one thing to have numbers, but then to create the decision support tools or user-friendly interfaces is where you turn it into action. So thank you for that comment. Would anyone else? I see a lot of heads nodding, so that's nice. Dean?
Yeah, hi. Totally agree on the economic thing. I was just in a meeting last night, and we talked about in terms of land conservation and working lands conservation, that arguing about the benefits to soil and so forth, and even climate, are meaningful to some people, but really economics are meaningful to a lot of people, and we really need to hammer on that, because these things do have economic consequences. And I think, generally speaking, my opinion, the natural climate solutions are very positive economically in the long term. So we really need to look at that. I forget, I put 2 or 3 things in here and I forget exactly which ones they were, but one thing that interests me is, and maybe this is kind of baked into the cake already, because there was a slide 2, 3 slides ago about NCS metrics, but I'd sure like to see some easily implemented metric model sort of a thing for folks to evaluate projects and weigh their benefits in terms of carbon sequestration. And even maybe, well, I think I'll leave it at that. I think that's something that OWEB, I think, has baked into their project reviews, at least for some of their funding, but I'm not sure that there's a real consistent way for OWEB applicants to evaluate climate impacts of projects. So I'd like to see some work done on that.
Thanks, Dean. I think there's lots of threads with what you just said for this project, and you'll hear from the project team a little bit about the work they're planning on doing with us and what we're all going to do together. It is our aim too to try and get some metrics so that people know how to evaluate their work. We also, on the team, they have not introduced themselves yet. They will, are some economists. And so I'm sure they're listening with rapt attention right now. And are excited by all the threads of what they're hearing. Megan.
Want to second the suggestion that we focus on the economic benefits of NCS, and also I'm really interested in there are some opportunities right now with the governor's executive order on climate resilience for natural working lands to look at the climate resilience benefits of NCS as well, and there are connections between the two, right? If a farm, for example, is implementing practices that are more climate resilient, then their crops are protected from climate-related weather events, and they are potentially more profitable because their crops are protected. So I'd love to kind of add that piece of resilience into the economic discussion, possibly, or have a separate discussion about climate resilience as well. And
Great,
the potential opportunities with the governor's efforts right now.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think we'll definitely kick off the multiple benefits conversation with this project, and we'll keep that going through 2026. I think absolutely spot on. I agree with what you just said. Mike?
Yeah, from the comments about the economic benefits, maybe Dean could send me something offline, but I'm not saying there aren't any. I'm just very interested in what specifically you're talking about. So that'd be great if you could send me something. Also, I'm very concerned about the prosperity agenda. It seems like I follow it very closely. There's an attack on our natural and working lands to be converted to other uses. And it almost seems like a lot of our work will be nullified by this fairly extreme comments and agenda to transform our working lands into other uses, continue to build structures and convert them to other uses.
Thanks for that comment, Mike. Jason?
Hi, yeah. So I work for Green Diamond, which is a forest landowner in 700,000 acres around Klamath Falls is where our office is, or around there. I like the economic angle of this because it's easy to think of this as either or. You get the environmental outcome, you get the economic outcome. We utilize carbon credits and carbon markets to keep our forest lands working and on the ground. And I think there's an important message there. And that we can use the economic conversation to show how it doesn't have to be one or the other, that it's actually very complementary. It's certainly complementary to what we do at Green Diamond. We couldn't recover from the bootleg fire. We couldn't actually make a go of it profitably if it wasn't for that overlay of carbon value and ecosystem services that we are compensated for down there. So just doubling down on the economic message and making sure that our audience knows it doesn't have to be one or the other, but this can be tailored to lift both.
If there are some actually speakers that you would all like to have us bring in to these meetings, so that we can foster some of this discussion in the latter part of the year. We'd love to have it. So in the chat or in the Google Doc, please, list your ideas.
We can take you all out in the woods.
Yeah, would love to go out in the woods.
Oh wait, no travel budget.
You might have read my mind. Oh, right, we're not allowed to go anywhere. Wait. Okay, thank you, Jason. Jocelyn?
Yeah, two things. One, to echo the value of the ecosystem services and the idea that farmland or these other natural lands are the best use. And we just had those December floods along the coast, and it really shows every couple years we get these El Nino years, farmland is the best use. If we were developing and paving on that land, or obviously, we could also restore the habitat, but development is not always the best use. So I like that people have recognized that, and that economic modeling of these farmlands are absorbing floodwaters, or in other cases, preventing heat island effects in urban areas. I just think that is definitely a way to go. My other one is just that column related to policy. There's so many different ideas of policies in Oregon where NCS could be influential or informative, and just curious of who is leading that conversation and bringing NCS to those different venues. We've got the Community Climate Investments Program, EPR, LCDC, all of these separate sort of movements, and NCS has impact for every single one. So I'm really excited to see just all of those different places, and I hope that we have some champions within this group in Oregon that can help bring that to the forefront as a topic for those different areas.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Agree. Also, we hope to present and share the information as we can at Odo. And yes, encourage everyone to kind of take a hold of this information and use it as you can. I think it is really informative and can help us start I hear you all weaving together the importance of looking at all the benefits that nature-based action brings us, and having a whole complete picture when we make policy decisions about land use. And so we'll keep that in mind as we build our agenda for this year. If there's no other comments, thank you for that great discussion. As always, lots of fodder for Jason and I in the chair to think through. I think we will close this segment. Also, you can see why it's so important we have it in writing, because there's no way we could keep track of this otherwise. So thank you for participating in our Easy Retro. All right. Find my notes. Great. Let us get to the Natural Climate Solutions and Metrics project. Thanks to the team for being here today. They are here to introduce themselves, spend some time on the project approach, go over their current work on compiling existing agency programs and metrics. This work is meant to kind of be a lay of the land, right, for some of the rest of their work. And in total, it will inform us about the needs and gaps as well, where we are with natural climate solutions in the state, and what kind of information we have relative to metrics and tracking. It'll also give us clues about the tracking infrastructure that we do or do not have related to keeping track of this information. Importantly, we'll be also be able to identify steps that we need to take next. And that is, it feels like what a thread of commonality between all the projects that we've done this year is really just trying to figure out where we're at and where we need to go next. The work that they'll speak to you about today informs a set of fact sheets that they'll also speak about to orient you to a resource that I think will be really useful to all of you. And we're hoping the agencies about each NCS pathway and related sub-activities. Next slide. We have run through the tasks from this scope of work before, and I have just flashed some key deliverables, but there are a few bottom lines for this team that they emphasized in their project approach, and that is worth sharing with you, and wanted to also link it to the statute. So the NCS statute emphasizes leveraging existing programs to do the NCS work in the state as much as possible, as well as the Resilience EO that was put out. This team is charged with conducting a comprehensive assessment of programs that exist and the natural climate solutions and related sub-activities that are already being implemented by those programs. Compilation of this information takes a lot of time. So when they share their work today, please remember it's preliminary, and they're here for engagement, and it will benefit from your guidance. And also, it's easy to see a spreadsheet and not see the blood, sweat, and tears that go into it. So I just want to thank the team for their work at the pace this project is demanding, and we really appreciate it. Second, this project is crafted for feedback style engagement, which we'll be kicking off today, as we are doing right now. And lastly, this work is aiming to develop key metrics, right, daily metrics that can be the same across several natural climate solution activities across multiple programs. So that it's possible not only to track the work individually, but to build the metrics infrastructure that helps scale the work across the landscape. So you'll hear the project team talk about impacts of NCS in terms of community impact metrics, which includes ecological, economic, and public health factors, and related to what we were just talking about. Essentially, everything except carbon contributions, which they talk about in terms of carbon impacts. I wanted to remind the group that the statute uses the phrase community impact metric. So that's why that term is being used and the phrase is being used. It's not set in stone, but it is, statutory language. And so the scope of work was written that way. So you'll hear that. I wanted to familiarize you with that term. Next slide. Second, I'll just quick flash the timeline. We started working with this team in November, and then we hit the holiday season, during which time they worked on their project approach, and they started on their compilation of what they're going to share with today. By April, they'll have done an awful lot of work. This is not showing all of their work, but they will be sharing with us draft carbon contributions and community impact estimates, which will be exciting, and also the draft fact sheets, which they'll talk about today. And by June, after lots of engagement and public comment period, they'll be finalizing their report. So their contract ends June 30th. And with that, it is finally time to hand it to the project team to talk over their work and engage with you all. Jeff, are you around?
I am here.
Oh, fabulous. Okay, Jen, next slide. And Jeff, please take it away for your team.
Thanks, Liz. I appreciate it. And thanks for the nice introduction and soft landing. Also, it feels great to be in such a welcoming environment, getting to hear the earlier comments about the importance of economic valuation of co-benefits, and it just reaffirmed for me my decision to be an environmental economist was still relevant in this world. So that's good to hear. Anyways, just quickly, I'm kind of managing the overall project. I have a team of scientists behind me that are also supporting, and you'll hear from at least 2 of them today and hopefully others in the future as we go through the project. But again, as Liz said, just kind of wanting to introduce you to our team and also meet you folks as a committee. So we'll be interacting with you periodically over the spring. And then, so just be familiar with our faces and who we are and what our backgrounds are. And then we'll just kind of walk through a bit of background on where we come from and our thinking, but then also start to dive into the meat of what we've been doing over the last 4 to 5 weeks, and then where we hope to get by April in that timeline that Liz flashed for us. And then we'll walk through this fact sheet that we're trying to develop as a kind of a final output that would be a lasting kind of reference item for folks to come back to in the future. And then really open it up for discussion and try to answer as many questions as we can. And yeah, happy to take questions before we move on. Megan, or maybe by accident. I think you're on mute.
Just, I assume this will be part of your presentation, but just want to make, I'm pretty familiar with the activity-based metrics and community impact metrics because I've been following this for so long, but some folks aren't. So just want to make sure that part of the overview here is going to include really what that means and what they are.
The community and yes, I think we will review just to provide some examples at this point, I think, but
Okay, and maybe just kind of, yeah, I feel like people might need a little grounding in what that means, what activity-based metrics and community impact metrics are.
great. Thanks. Yes.
If there's still questions at the end of their presentation, we'll make sure that's driven home. But I think that what you guys are going to present will answer that question, Jeff.
I think so, but if it doesn't, I want to make sure we get it addressed. So, but yes, activity-based metrics. Yes, let me focus on this so we can get through these initial slides and get to the to the work that we've been doing. Is it Jasmine who's forwarding the slides? Thank you. So this is our team. I'm kind of just leading the project, and I'm been at our RTI is a not-for-profit. It's been around since the late 1950s. We're a research institute that does a lot of different things. I direct a body of about 20 economists, environmental scientists, and data scientists, and we do work over the last 20 years on climate analysis, environmental impact assessments, other types of modeling needs in the forest, agriculture, and other environmental areas as well. And with that, I think I'd like everyone on the team who's on the call today maybe to come off mute and just give a quick introduction of who you are, maybe starting with Chris, and we'll just move down go to the right and then down to the second line.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'm Chris Wade. I'm a natural resource economist. I've worked in this space over the last 10 years here at RTI at the intersection of forestry, agriculture, and working lands. So leading up a few of the different tasks, and we'll be speaking further throughout this call. But yeah, happy to be here and excited to present this work to you all. Hannah?
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Lohman. I am an engineer, so not an economist. My background is environmental engineering, and I have experience in both natural as well as engineered water systems. And I have done a lot of sustainability work with water, both evaluating the economics of different potential solutions for water systems, as well as the emissions and other decision-making factors. I'm really excited to be on this project and happy to meet you all. Alice.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, first of all. My name is Alice Favero, and I'm a senior research economist at RTI. As the slides reports, I have more than 15 years of experience with economic analysis, especially focusing on the efficient use of land for climate change mitigation, environmental economic resilience, energy production also, and conservation and economic welfare. I've been leading different projects with federal agency NGOs that are really looking at the application of economic models to explore potential trade-offs of nature-climate solution for both the US, but also at the global level. I will now pass it to Smith.
Thanks, Alice. My name is Smith Vasquez Caballero. I'm an economist here with RTI. I've been in RTI for about 4 years now. Most of my work has been related with modeling of the management of natural resources and how changes in management impact those that use the resources, but also how how the change in the value of ecosystem services change when there is a change in management of natural resources. I'll be supporting the outreach piece of this project, and I'm based in Southern Oregon here in Ashland. I want to pass it now to Robert.
Thank you, Smith. I'm Robert Beach. I'm a senior environmental and natural resource economist with over 25 years of experience. working on a whole array of different economic analyses, a lot of it around agriculture, forestry, and land use, working lands, bioenergy, and just other remote sensing, spatial analyses related to natural climate solutions and related topics. And back to you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. So that's the team. We are obviously an eclectic group, but all have kind of a single driven mission to kind of push to do more of this type of analysis. So with that, I guess I'm going to hand it over so I don't speak for the whole period of time, but Dr. Favreau, if you could take this, and then maybe we'll hear from Chris later. Thank you so much.
Of course, happy to do that. So before describing our project, we want to give you a little bit of a description of our work related to natural climate solution. So in this slide, what we are highlighting are some of the most recent outcomes from our collaborations with the US EPA, New York State, the US Climate Alliance, and America is all in. So basically, these reports shown here all include natural climate solution components that they span from estimating their mitigation potential, which is a part of this project as well, to assessing the role in the national mitigation targets, as well as their environmental and economic co-benefits. So across this project, what we were doing was quantifying both CO2 and non-CO2 mitigation potential of different land-based activities, such as reforestation, improved forest management, cover cropping, soil management, and land use. So many of them are included in the project that Chris will describe later. We also assess something that is very relevant, so the investments required to implement these solutions, so the economics component. And this was a great support for decision makers in order to not only understand natural climate solution per se, but also how they can fit within a broader mitigation portfolio. And finally, we were looking at co-benefits such as job creation, improved water quality. Next slide, please. So this is giving you the other perspective. Our work also contributes to cutting-edge science. In this slide, what we are highlighting are some of our most recent natural climate solution-related peer-reviewed publications in some of the leading scientific journals. These studies were focusing on very different questions, all related to NCS, such as the mitigation potential, uncertainty, land system dynamics, and with the ultimate goal of advancing the science of NCS. So what we were doing here was like a mix of different things, but with the main focus of improving methodologies for estimating the mitigation potential, assessing trade-offs across NCS activities, and estimating their long-term impacts. Next slide, please. And finally, this slide is basically giving you another overview of our expertise, which is the ability of translating something that is very complicated, science-based, into tools that are somehow accessible to a broader audience, and that can also support the real-world decision-making process. So in this specific case, what we are showing is a web-based decision support tool developed by a group within our team to assess nature-based solution in the state of Louisiana. So this tool is a technical tool to support non-technical stakeholders to identify the potential of different projects across different locations, to estimate its feasibility in terms of implementation, and also quantifying different co-benefits in terms of water quality, but also others that are described in the tool. I will now pass it to Chris to go into the description of the project. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. So we could jump to the next slide. And Mike, yes, Liz responded, but absolutely, we can share those references with you. So an update on where we stand, as Jeff mentioned and Liz mentioned, this work we started in November, came through the holiday season, and have been kind of really up and running over the last few weeks. And you know, we're taking a multi-staged approach to get to what this final outcome will be, these NCS fact sheets. And so the first task that we've been working on and thinking through is really trying to do a thorough review of state programs that exist that are either directly or indirectly influencing the adoption of NCS activities. And with these reviews, really trying to identify what metrics, so what explicit pieces are being measured, whether that's greenhouse gas impacts, water quality impacts, jobs, acreages enrolled in different activities. And so this is, you know, this is kind of a summary of where we are here on this state program review. So far we've looked across 32 different programs within the natural and working land sectors. This includes 8 agencies that are included in the interagency working group, as well as 6 non-interagency working group partners. And so far with this, we have found that there's about 7 different programs or 7 different carbon impact metrics being explicitly measured across these 32 programs, and about 14 community impact metrics within those programs that are explicitly being measured. And so in total with these 32, we've also looked across a total of 34 kind of data sources or sets. So a few of those programs, you know, are pointing to explicit kind of external methodologies or published data on how they're coming up with, you know, what is the carbon impact of implementing reforestation on, you know, X amount of acres. And so with that, we're going to dive just a little bit into those programs. So if we'll jump to the next slide. Yeah, so to summarize, or to give you a little more detail, actually, here I've listed the different agencies and the programs that we've looked at so far. And that kind of lead into those numbers of, you know, kind of 7 carbon impact metrics, 14 community impact metrics. And so it includes, you know, Department of Environmental Quality, Department of Land and Conservation, Fish and Wildlife, and you know these are kind of the programs that we've read through. We've identified the data that's being collected from different activities, and tried to summarize in a kind of final spreadsheet that we've been working on that we will be sharing at a later date. One thing to note, you know, as you're looking through this and kind of thinking through programs that you're aware of, we haven't looked outside of state agency programs yet. And so, you know, programs that are funded by USDA and NRCS, such as like the EQIP program, we haven't looked at those specifically, but it's on our list and it's on our to-do list. And so, you know, we are open and hoping to have feedback on kind of what we might be missing here. So definitely let us know, but just a heads up there that we have not looked kind of outside of the state yet. And so let's jump to the next slide and I can highlight, so thinking about what those, and this gets to the earlier question of what are these NCS metrics and the impact categories. So on the left, we have the different greenhouse gas impact metrics that we've identified. You know, some programs are looking specifically at carbon sequestration, so kind of a net number. Others are looking at avoided emissions, you know, especially things, I think of avoided emissions more on kind of the energy side, but that can also be present, you know, on the agriculture side. If you're reducing inputs, you're kind of avoiding emissions from a baseline. We've identified some programs that are looking at a carbon stock or storage. So looking at kind of the total, how are we increasing our carbon stock, say on forest lands, if we're doing afforestation or reforestation activities. There's also programs aimed at kind of reducing the emissions and measuring the reduction in emissions from management or disturbance decisions. So this gets to kind of to that resiliency question. If we're doing fuel management changes or fuel reduction, fuel risk reduction on forest lands, you know, then our future mitigation or the future storage of forestry should increase, you know, because we've reduced that risk of fire or other disturbances, natural disturbances. And then there's also some programs that have been looking at kind of net biological sequestration. So thinking how this management can increase the capacity of kind of sequestration, as well as kind of reducing emissions from biological sources. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I don't really understand how carbon sequestration is different than carbon stocks.
Yes, Liz, go ahead. I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, and I'm going to point to Jason because that's just his bailiwick. So Jason, can you run through that quickly?
Yeah, carbon sequestration is more the process of removing carbon from the atmosphere, and then the carbon stock is like the resulting carbon that is embodied in plants or, woody biomass and things like that.
Yeah.
Soils.
So I would add that like every year you could have a sequestration rate, whereas you might be calculating the stock or the current stock that is already in that land type. And so they can be kind of two different measurements.
Yeah, sequestration moves carbon into your stocks, emissions move carbon out of your stocks. So it's kind of another connection to make there.
If there's more questions, maybe that's a good fact sheet. So if that has been kind of missed, so let us know, Mike, if that might be helpful, and others in the chat or in the Google Doc.
Oh yeah, I can do that.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks, Jason, there for jumping in. So yeah, thinking kind of that time dimension is really, I think, what kind of drives these two, the sequestration versus the stock. For environmental and community impact, so as Liz mentioned, this is kind of statutory language, it's community impact metrics. And really what we've been finding is we've been grouping really anything that's not greenhouse gas related here to the community impact metrics, being inclusive of what those might be. So this could be changes to temperature or heat exposure. Thinking about urban forestry might reduce heat exposure within an urban center. This could be water quality metrics. Stormwater here could be a runoff measure. There's things like air quality, ozone, PM metrics that are being measured across these programs. We'll speak to a little bit on kind of this flood and hazard mitigation. So there's programs in place that are measuring the resilience or the reduction in flood risk, and reduction in kind of hazard risk. One of the more extensive programs extensive metrics that we've seen that comes up regularly is here this habitat extent, quality or resilience. So that gets to the mention earlier of kind of conservation land. The acreages of land being enrolled in activities is a fairly straightforward measure, but can help kind of qualify or quantify kind of habitat extent and improvement. Other things in that realm include biodiversity measures. So that could be like species per acre or connectivity. We've found programs that are looking at kind of farmland or open land preservation, invasive species. And then we get to more of what was mentioned kind of in the earlier conversation and the group conversation. There are a few programs that are looking specifically at social and economic impacts. So thinking how the implementation of an NCS activity can result in economic improvement or changes in local economics, whether that's job opportunities, tourism, access to open areas, things like that. And then there's also metrics on kind of transportation access that are being tracked, as well as community vulnerability. So these are, they're a long list. I won't say that it's finished at this point. As we continue to review programs and literature, I think we will be continuing to add kind of measures here. So if I'm missing something, let us know, but also know that it's not a complete list at this point. So let's jump to the next slide if there aren't any questions there. Yeah, so thinking through kind of, we've looked at these initial state programs. What are some of our key takeaways that we found? We found that 13 of the programs that we've looked at explicitly measure, 13% explicitly measure carbon outcomes. I will let you decide kind of if that's a good number or a bad number, or if it's just a number. But this includes the Department of Forestry smoke management project, So they're looking at emissions from prescribed burns. There's also work, actually mentioned earlier, the Blue Carbon Working Group has this kind of blue carbon workbook and greenhouse gas inventory. And so that's tracking changes in emissions on coastal wetlands and projects looking to improve kind of quality of coastal wetlands. And then there's this Green Infrastructure Grant Program that specifically is looking at greenhouse gas impacts from this urban tree canopy expansion. And so, these are just a few examples, not being fully exhaustive here. Similarly, we have some early findings on the community outcomes. So that will be our next slide. And this one is a little, it's a little more inclusive. So we'll go to the next slide. Perfect. So out of the programs we've looked at, over half are explicitly measuring these community outcomes. So as I mentioned, things like flood and hazard mitigation, so the Department of Land and Conservation's hazard planning and coastal resilience programs are tracking kind of areas protected and how that leads to damage avoided. So some of these economic impacts are already being included in existing programs. The water quality improvements under the Clean Water State Revolving Fund is tracking and estimating nutrient reductions and sediment load metrics. The habitat habitat extent and resilience is being reported in OEB's restoration grants. So that's looking at kind of acres restored in these species outcome metrics. And then what I thought was interesting is ODOT is measuring kind of biodiversity and connectivity metrics, and specifically looking at kind of car and wildlife impacts and how that's being reduced by increasing or expanding kind of wildlife corridors. So that was not a measure that I thought of initially, but I think is an interesting one to kind of track these benefits to reduce the risk of kind of wildlife and human interactions. So any questions there? Perfect. We can go to the next slide. So in addition to kind of these program reviews, we've also been looking at outside literature, so kind of academic literature, EPA reports, USDA findings to also look at what are some standard estimates of kind of greenhouse gas impacts from NCS activities or these community impact metrics. So similarly to the spreadsheet where we have kind of summarizing the different state programs, we also have an fairly exhaustive literature review going for kind of standardized greenhouse gas reduction estimates and the community impact metrics based on literature. And so that's a range of kind of spatial and temporal scales. We have some studies looking specifically at Oregon or specific regions of Oregon, and then we have others that might be, more national in scope. But we're trying to be as Oregon specific as we can, depending on the NCS practice, but also making sure that we are inclusive of kind of the leading science and the best estimates that are out there. And so together that literature review of kind of NCS activity values, as well as what current state programs are using and relying on, are feeding into these fact sheets. So kind of this final deliverable where we'll develop a fact sheet for each of the identified NCS activities. And that fact sheet will be hopefully fairly exhaustive in the information that it's including. So we've listed here a table kind of summarizing the different sections that'll be in each of these fact sheets. Starting with kind of what is the activity description. Here we have an example of like reforestation. So, it's a fairly simple definition of what that activity is. We'll also speak to things like where is it applicable or where does it fit in within the state? Reforestation might be more likely in one region versus another. So we'll try to kind of point to that under the opportunities. The activity description should also include kind of a summary of resilience and some of the co-benefits from these activities. We'll then move through to kind of the related programs. So summarizing what we found in this previous work that I just mentioned, point to some of these state programs or federal programs that are incentivizing and encouraging these activities to be adopted. And I think that'll help, kind of, if folks have a specific area of interest, it at least points you to who might be working in that area within the state or other kind of federal agencies. Then in section 3, we really get to kind of the meat of it. So thinking about these activity-based impacts and the greenhouse gas science. So getting to, what is a standard unit of measure of emissions for each of these activities. So you can start kind of comparing, we start comparing the different activities against, not necessarily against one another, but you'll have kind of a standard way to look across these activities. So that could be things like annual sequestration. It could be lifetime removal. So think about, what is the total net benefit of an activity over its full lifetime? You could think about kind of drivers of variability or uncertainty, as well as kind of the time of benefits. There's some short-term activities that might have immediate benefits, but maybe they're smaller in total, or you have, some long-term benefits or activities that are more long-term focused and just take time to realize. Next in this third section, I'll stop there. Dean.
Chris, could you explain what X-Y means, like in 3A?
Yeah. So this is just a rough example. So we are, for each of these activities, like annual sequestration, we're going to be presenting a range. And so X-Y is, or X-Y here is just kind of giving that as an example. So, we don't want a specific, this is the one and only number, but provide a range of estimates.
Makes sense. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. And so then as we, we'll present those values, we'll then speak a little bit to the different methodologies used to calculate those values, whether that's, remotely sensed models or plot measurements, to provide a little more information on where they came from. And that'll actually kind of provide some information too on the different estimates. So, different methods might result in different estimate levels or values. We'll also speak to some of the spatial and temporal resolution. So, as I mentioned in the literature review that we're doing, some NCS activities are measured, we might actually have kind of field level estimates of their impact within Oregon. Others might be more of a national average or a regional average. So we want to make sure that we include that information for decision makers and for folks who are, on the ground trying to implement these activities. For section 4, we'll speak to kind of the community and impact estimates or ecosystem estimates. So thinking through a range of, that kind of long laundry list of metrics we're tracking. But these could be things like jobs per acres restored. It could be local spending per activity. It could be kind of tourism impacts if you're conserving lands. And then on the non-economic side, this could be improvements in water quality, reductions in runoff, improved air quality through kind of reduced PM. And we're hoping to have both kind of quantitative metrics here. So far, those have been tough to find, but then we also want to have qualitative. So ideally, we would be able to say, an acre of reforestation provides, this range of water quality impacts, but it might, depending on the literature and what we're able to find, it might be more of a qualitative summary of kind of the co-benefits of these activities. Similar to the greenhouse gas science and estimates, we'll provide a run through of kind of the methods used to estimate these community and ecosystem impacts. We'll summarize the spatial and temporal resolution of those. And then we move to kind of the summary of each NCS activity. So thinking about the key considerations when you're implementing these. The benefits are going to vary by climate, by species, by location. So we'll try to speak to the variation that exists there within the state. There might be things like long-term maintenance. Some of these activities need to be regularly tended to, while others are more, kind of set it and forget it and let nature do its thing. So we want to make sure that we point that out and make it clear kind of what it takes to make these projects permanent or at least kind of long lasting. We can also speak to in this section kind of upfront costs. So, we will previously have spoken to some of the benefits, but what are some of the costs that it might take? Some ag-based activities might reduce yield slightly, but maybe they also kind of reduce risk of crop loss. And so, just being clear in sharing the information that folks need when trying to decide if implementation really is right for them. Finally, we'll summarize the studies, highlight the most important ones and those that we use to publish these numbers so folks can look back and get more detail if needed. And then a summary there of kind of what we think and what the potential might be within the state. So taking some of the greenhouse gas impacts and estimates and combining it with feasibility metrics or measures within the state. And so then that can feed into kind of the goal setting. So I'll stop there on the fact sheets. Are there any other questions or thoughts or maybe even pieces that you would like to see that aren't here?
Ben?
Yeah, thanks. This is super helpful. I had two questions. The first one is, with things that are a regulatory requirement for operations like reforestation, like in Oregon, if you harvest, you legally have a requirement that you replant. It doesn't seem like that's a natural climate solution. So how do you separate in this what's a regulatory requirement versus what's above and beyond a baseline of regulated and responsible land stewardship? And also, given it's something that there is no permitting system for when you harvest and replant, seems like it'd be a very, very difficult thing to track on a spatial scale. So I'm just curious about that. The second question is about how much spatial data you guys are using to support this, because it seems like things that are really clear, like fuel reduction treatments, for instance, on the east side, are all tracked in the Oregon Department of Forestry FERNS notification system, and it's a shapefile that's available publicly. So it seems like there's kind of no hurdle to get that spatial data, and it's a super, super clear, easy data set to use and well-documented impacts. Like looking at your fact sheet, if I look at reforestation, it seems really hard to do this. If I look at fuel reduction treatment, it seems really easy, and there's a significant literature to support it. So how do you end up splitting out like where to spend your energy and time and limited capacity and budget, where there are some things that are like that are like the FERNS data is there. You could go do that in 10 hours versus reforestation has all of these social regulatory questions around it. So that's a big messy question, but the clear ones are regulatory baseline and using spatial data and how much that factors in.
Great. I appreciate both of those questions. I want to start with the second, because I do think it's a little easier to answer in that there's limited time, limited effort. So I do think there will be variation, right, in the spatial representation by NCS. Just kind of a symptom of the data that's available and the time limitation. So as you mentioned, I think we will have some that are, maybe not pixel level estimates, especially included in a fact sheet, but we'll try to be using kind of the best available data, the most highly spatially resolute. But yeah, we're not going to have kind of time to downscale national reforestation estimate.
Yeah, Chris, to support you just a little bit in this moment, part of this project too is to just understand the lay of land. So Ben, I imagine we're going to uncover like, oh, we don't have that data at all for this NCS, activity or sub activity. And that's going to be hugely helpful piece of information in order to like move forward. So love your questions and just wanted to support you, Chris, in that moment.
Thank you. And yeah, the first question I do think is really interesting. And this is something internally we've been talking about, baseline setting. And so if the baseline is that any harvesting has to be replanted and you have to kind of reforest, that is different than afforestation or kind of forest management activity. So I think that's interesting, something we're still thinking through. But I'm glad you brought that up. Because we need to.
One follow-up question on that. And Liz, maybe this is more of a question for you. is there somebody so it seems like a lot of this is going to rely on forestry data. And I'm wondering if there's somebody at Oregon Department of Forestry actively working with you guys to access their data sets, because they are both the regulatory agency for this, and they're the most significant clearinghouse of data on this. And it seems like a big gap here might be like, how do we access all of their data? We've worked as consultants doing that a lot, but there are people internal to ODF who have good knowledge around that, and that could save a lot of work at this point. So I'm sure it's something you've already thought about, but curious where that stands.
Yeah, we are meeting with our interagency working group next week. And we have representatives from ODF on that group. And then depending on data needs and or gaps and or questions, then they get us in contact with their contacts within their agencies so that we can all get together. We imagine actually when we present to the agencies next week that there will be explicit follow-up meetings per each agency so that we can be like, who should we talk to? Where's the data? We know some of the data that was, whatever data was appropriate for the inventory. We know, so we know about the ferns database. But there's likely more too. And so, and also, if you have certain contacts at ODF through your consultancy that you're like, oh, this person has this data set, that actually might still be helpful, even for our contacts, right? Like at ODF, because big agencies, not everyone knows everything all the time, all at once. So please do email us or feel free to share us those contacts if you think it would be helpful, because it is part of the hurdle is compiling all this information and getting to the right place. Megan, or were we finished with Ben and Chris? Were you okay? Everyone was finished answering? Okay. Okay, Megan.
Hi. I have been involved with the Natural Climate Solutions Coalition and involved even in drafting the statute. And not that I like the language necessarily in the statute, but the statute refers to, if I remember correctly, I'm just using my memory and what I've had in my head. I'm with Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network, and we've been waiting for this piece. This is our piece. This is the piece we will be most engaged in. And we're super interested in what we have been calling and thinking about as activity-based metrics and community impact metrics. That's, I believe, what's in the statute. And I am seeing activity-based impacts, and I'm seeing community and ecosystem impacts here on your fact sheets list. And I've heard you refer to those things. And I just have a little feedback about language. Sometimes when I hear the word impact, I think of, even though impacts can be positive or negative, I think of negative impact when I hear impact generally. I don't know if that's true for most people, but when I hear impact, I think about how something's been negatively impacted rather than a benefit. And so I might encourage you, or I'd love to chat with someone if it's helpful. Certainly Chair McDonald knows a lot about the history and how this has been referred to over time. But for those of us who've been engaged for a long time, it helps my brain to kind of be consistent with what we've been waiting for. And we've been waiting for activity-based metrics and community-based metrics. I don't love that, so maybe we could kind of combine them to impacts and metrics or something, but I would love to know that that's what we're working on, if that is what we're working on.
That's absolutely what we're working on, Megan. Yeah, I also have a long history on the project, so I understand what you're saying and what you're wishing for and what you're hoping for. Yes. So when we're talking about the impacts and or, we're talking about activity outcomes that need to be ascribed a metric, right? And so all of these impacts, actions, activities, whether they're positive or negative, that they're looking at the metrics, the measurable unit, like what is being measured for each. So Chris ran through 5 different ways to measure carbon contributions. Each of those will have a metric, it's a carbon equivalent metric. And it gets a little bit more varied and difficult with anything other. So environmental metrics, right? community metrics it talked about some of the metrics being jobs per acre restored. That is a metric. And so I think probably on this fact sheet, I hear you. And so maybe we could make it more clear where it's like, here are the recommended metrics, like from these, from what we've taken away from what the agencies are doing or these programs are doing. Is that, because I think we're talking about the same thing, but I hear that you're saying there's like you feel like there's not, we're like missing, that we're like ships missing something in terminology.
Yeah, you can either kind of incorporate that language somewhere, or you can just tell me and others, like, that's what we're doing. When you see impacts, those are the metrics. That's the metric statute that we're addressing.
Yeah, no, I think we could make it clearer on the fact sheet. I think we could make like blaringly clear that here's the metrics, the recommended metrics.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Jonathan?
Thank you. I agree that it can be emotionally dysregulating to see impacts when it's something that is actually potential benefit and creates confusion. So I think it is worth looking hard at word choices because of that little emotional reaction. But the real point I was intending to make follows up on what Ben was saying about differentiating between standard practice and the opportunities for additional, more creative natural climate solutions activities to move the meter, thinking about if we're in forestry, which is this example here, and maybe this would be covered somewhere else, but like, what are the benefits of extending a rotation by 10, 20, 50 years, whatever, as opposed to just forestry? We know forestry sequesters carbon and all that good stuff, but really being clear on, this is a decision support tool, trying to be as clear as possible where there are opportunities, carbon enhancement in farm soils, whatever, that decision makers can really say, okay, yeah, cost benefit, yeah, let's do this versus doing something else. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for that suggestion. And I need to look back at the list of kind of specific NCS activities, but I know forestry management is one of those which would include changes in rotation lengths. So that, there should be a fact sheet there that aligns specifically with that example. Yeah. And Liz, maybe that's something we add to the slides that folks can access, is the list of the specific NCS activities that we're including.
Yeah, I will reshare I'll reshare the link to the posted list that this committee has received before, but actually, Jason, while we're talking, can you find the link and share it? Thank you.
Will do.
Mike?
Yeah, on reforestation, what am I missing? I would think that the ferns clear-cut acres would be equal to reforestation acres, or are there too many acres that are converted to non-forestry that don't get reforested? What am I missing? And the other interesting thing about increasing the rotation length, which is a very good thing to do, we're finding that much of our wood now is too big to go to any mills. So that's a bit of a challenge, but they're nice big trees.
I feel like we're missing Betsy in the group today, because I feel like Betsy would have spoken about that already. But thank you, Mike.
Yeah, and I'll speak, I think the other pieces there on reforestation could be in response to like natural disturbance. So having, after wildfire, having intensive planting to kind of re-encourage forestry. And then I guess you also get into like